Hello YouTube friends, I've got a sewing video for you today. I'm going to do some hand stitching, but before we get going I want to give you a heads up for a little announcement I'm going to be making a little later on about some changes that are happening here at the Last Homely House. I'll get started with the stitching and then we'll talk about that. I've got an empty design board behind me, which almost never happens. I've given it a bit of a clean with this thing. I don't mind that there are little threads on it, it's not a problem. But it does look better now, doesn't it? That'll do. The design board's empty because I've just finished making a quilt. Over on Patreon I do what I call the alongs, the make-alongs, and I've just finished making the latest quilt, which was a Liberty print Pajagi quilt. That's over there on Patreon. That'll be getting sent to its new owners soon. I'm very excited about that. But now I have an empty design board. So what I thought I would do, I thought it's time we looked at this again. It's a long time since we saw this. And so now that the design board's empty, I'm going to pin it back up again. Have a look at how big it is. The last time I looked at this, yes, it's in two pieces. And I'll pin it up and I'll tell you what it is for those of you who are new here. But I'll also leave a link to the playlist that's about this Hexagon English paper pieced blue quilt. I'll pin it up. Can you see that if I put it there? Just about there maybe? I've been wanting to get on with this for the longest time, and what I thought I would do today is stitch the two pieces together. So this one, now let's see if I can remember which way up it goes. When I'm piecing these together, I do them, I'll leave a link because I'm going to be describing things I've already talked about, but I put a little red dot on the paper on the inside. Can you see? Here, little red dot on there, which means that's the top. It's so simple. No red dot at the bottom, that's got to be the top. And it says top on here, so I'm going to put that one alongside it where it's supposed to be, which is right there. Okay, there it is. So for those of you who don't know what it is I'm making here, this is a quilt I'm making for my granddaughter Agnes, who's about 20 months old now. And I started it ages and ages ago, and the quilt is for when she comes to stay with me here, which won't be for a long time. You know, she'll be 2-3 years old before she stays overnight at grandma's probably. So I've got loads of time, there's no deadline for when I make this one for. And even if I haven't got it, it doesn't mean she can't stay at grandma's, does it? No. But that's what this quilt's for. So when I started making it, it was going to be quite a small kind of cot quilt. And then I got more ambitious for it, thinking it should be a quilt like a single bed quilt that she can have on and on as she grows up. Now, the way that I'm making it then, and as I say, there's definitely a playlist about this, and I'll leave an end card with that playlist on it, but so you can go and have a look at that. Now, it started out with a little basket, but now in this box here are all the things that I need to make the base pieces. And so what I've got here then is a box full of base pieces ready to go on here to carry on with this wash of colour, because I really like how, you know, the blues come in, the few greens here, then it goes to lightish purple, a lot of blues down here. So when I come, if I'm going to carry on here, and I think I will, then I've got to make this go up to the pale blues, and maybe make the pale blues come down here and these greens. So that's what I'm enjoying. It's a bit like painting with fabric, and I'm really enjoying that. So what I'm going to do today though is I don't need to make any more of these base pieces, but I am going to stitch these two pieces together and have a chat with you. So I'll get it off the board now and we'll do that. I tell you what, I'll just measure it before I take it off the board, just so that I can see how big it is. I haven't done that yet. So it's 46 down and 53 across. I'll write that down. 46 by 53. All I seem to be doing lately is putting quilts on the board and measuring them. Okay, so I'm going to get reset up here so that I can sit at the table and do some stitching. And we'll talk about this quilt. So I've got it off the board now. Here's the top of that big piece there. And there's the red dots on that bit there. And it looks a bit like you're wrestling with a very large beast. And you kind of are. A lot of times people ask me this question about the papers, and do I leave the papers in while I'm stitching it? And yeah, I think everyone has a different way of doing this, but my habit is to leave the papers in until the very end of the project, which means you need a lot of papers, because in fact when you take these out you can reuse them if you're careful about how you've stitched them. But I leave the papers in, which makes it a little bit unwieldy for this process, but it gives for me, it gives the piece structure. So imagine if I'd taken the papers out here, but you have to leave the papers in on the leading edge because that edge needs to be secured by the paper. That's the whole point of using the paper. But then that would mean that this looser bit here would pull on the stiffer bit unevenly, and I think if you were careful it wouldn't create a problem, but I don't like to do that. I think it puts too much strain on the stitches between the part that's got no papers and the part that's got papers. So for my method of doing this, I leave the papers in. It does make this a little bit more like wrestling with fabric, but once I get started it's actually not hard. So I'm just going to explain a bit about the hexagons. I've got them all in this box, and so let's look at this one. So this is an inch hexagon, and I've described in the if you do watch any more of the playlist, this is an inch here. That's the measurement you're looking at. Here is 1 inch. You're not measuring across the ways, because that's two different measurements, there and there, two different measurements. But that's always an inch on these six-sided pieces. And I've had this box beside me while I've been watching a bit of telly or doing whatever it is I do. And I've got a load of paper templates in here, which I cut on my Sizzix machine, and loads of scraps of fabric, which are the right side sort of fabric for the colourway that I'm using. Now, I was running out of fabric from my stash. I was hoping to make all of this from scraps I have, because they're colours I really like, so I've got loads of them. But I was running out of variety, so I bought some charm packs. And so here's a charm pack full of purpley, they're Kaffe Fassett charm packs, you won't be surprised to hear. And here's one, and they're 5-inch squares, and if you're careful, if you cut them really, really carefully, in half and in half again, just really pay attention to getting that correct, and then take one of your hexagons, and you can get 4 hexagons from 1 charm square, so you get 4 times the number of charm squares, which is a lot of little base unit hexagons. Brilliant. So I've been making loads of those, and I will make more because I haven't quite decided how big this is going to be, but this isn't big enough. But we're talking about how to fix it together now. So let me find the bit that says top there, and the bit that is the top. Just a minute. there and there. I need to put those two together, don't I? I'm just using an ordinary decent cotton. This one is Gutermann. I use Aurifil, Gutermann, any one of those good brands that, you know, that aren't going to snap on me. And starting this is actually a little tricky, but once you get going with it, it's no harder than sewing 2 hexagons together. So I'm just making sure that they're properly lined up. I'll show you this in a second when I've done it. And I'm going to do the first. Once I get going with this, it'll be a piece of cake, I promise. Oh, a piece of cake. Would be quite nice now, wouldn't it? So a big piece like this, quite possibly, is a little bit more of a chore than a smaller piece. But once I get going with this and the backwards and forwards of the 2 sides of the hexagon that I'm sewing together, it'll actually be really quite straightforward. So I've shown this on the other videos, but I'm going to do an over and over stitch. Can you see? You don't need a very long piece of thread, that's fine. And then when I get to the corner, the thing that I'm trying to avoid happening, okay, is a hole here where those 3 all meet together. 1, 2, 3 corners coming together, and the last thing I want is a hole there. And so I'm going to fold that over, and because the papers are still in, I can fold the paper really accurately so that the next bit of sewing that is presented to me is 2 lovely straight edges. Okay, and so my habit is, and everyone's got their own way of doing this, but I like to do 3 or 4 little over stitches in the corner where all those 3 edges meet together, and then crack on along the side. Now I've counted them before and I get about 20 stitches. So the stitches are tiny, and I'm feeling for the paper with my needle so that I'm not piercing the paper, which is why I say you can use them again. I'm not going into the paper. The paper's just providing me with a template to work against. So that's what I'm doing. So now I've come to the end of that little run, and I'm going to turn the work round. And if you only look at the little bit you're working on, it's really easy. I'm going to fold that over now, and I'm going to fold the paper in that hexagon, so that then what's presented to me are the 2 straight edges of this hexagon. Now you can do that with just 3 hexagons, or you can do it with 300 or however many I've got here. It'd be good to count them, wouldn't it? I'm not quite sure how many there are. And then my little 3 stitches of over sewing on the corner, which will make a really, really strong hole-free transition. So we've made a good start, and I'm just going to keep going now, and I'm kind of committed. I think I'm going to carry on until I've stitched both pieces together, because then what I want to go on to do is design a bit more to make the quilt bigger. I might check, there are definite quilt sizes, aren't there? I know Pinterest has charts I've used before, you know, what a single quilt is, or a, you know, whatever. And this is going to be a single quilt, but it is going to have borders. I'm quite interested in the idea of it having a border quilted into, and then I need to choose something sensational for the backing, don't I? I'm having thoughts and ideas about that, and also a number of people have asked me about how to finish the edges, because the edges, of course, aren't straight. How to deal with that. Also, how to quilt it. So all of those things are decisions and I'm thinking about, but they're all things that are well in the future, because, you know, first of all, I want to finish it to the size that I want. And I'm happy now. I'm just going to sit here and hand stitch until it's done. But right at the beginning, I gave you that little heads up about an announcement I was going to have to make about the channel. So I'll do it now. Don't worry, it's all fine. So when I turned on the camera 3.5, nearly 4 years ago now, and I was talking to 15 of you, I decided right from the start that I was never going to put adverts on my channel, because I don't like watching adverts on other people's channels, and I didn't think you needed to watch them either. But, and you know where I'm going now, don't you? For a little while there's been murmurings at YouTube, and I've been receiving the occasional emails about some changes that they're going to make. And I've printed off this email so that I can read to you the relevant bit. There's loads of changes that they're always fiddling on with something. But this is the relevant one, and it says this. It's YouTube's right to monetize. YouTube has the right to monetize all content on the platform, and ads will appear on videos. Now then, what that means is that YouTube have decided they will just put ads on channels that don't already have them. They'll put them anywhere they feel like in the video, and they'll keep all the revenue. And so on two counts, I'm not very pleased about that. One is that the adverts will appear on the Last Homely House in future, but they'll just be anywhere in the video. They'll pop up anywhere, which I don't really like. So I need to have control over that. But the second thing, and I think you'll all agree, that it's not very fair if YouTube profit from the videos that I make for you. From next week and future videos, there's going to be adverts on my channel. But if I choose to do it, it means that they'll be where I want them to be in the video, and I'll make them as minimal as possible. But also any ad revenue that I get will come to me rather than to YouTube. So I'm really disappointed to have to make this announcement, but it's got to happen. Yeah, that's it really. But what I've decided to do is to make my content available on Patreon ad-free for everybody on the $5 tier and above. So if anybody wanted to watch the videos ad-free, it'll be over there on for a $5 subscription, monthly subscription. I mean, I know that's not terribly fair, but then what YouTube's doing is not terribly fair either. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. It's out of my hands, and I can't really do anything more about it than just get on board. You know, don't you, that YouTube's ads are skippable ads, some of them, and if you watch them all the way to the end, then the content creator gets the revenue from it, but 100 people have to watch it right the way through to the end. There's a very small amount of revenue for a small channel like mine. I mean, my channel is growing. Have you seen the numbers lately? Which has surprised me enormously. So the channel is growing, which is probably why YouTube want to maximise on their income from what I'm doing. So that's the announcement. Sorry. Just to say, the accuracy of cutting these paper pieces really pays off when you're doing this part. So when you've got that accurate template cut, so never try and cut your paper templates with scissors. And if you're going to make your templates yourself, try really hard to get them as accurate as you possibly can, because it really pays off. The Sizzix machine's great for that. And then when you're stitching the fabric onto the papers, try really hard to make a nice crisp corner and a crisp edge, because that really helps as well. I'm going to put a film on, because this is going to take me a long time. But I'll get back to you at the end, and I'll show you what the whole piece looks like once both sides are stitched together. And we'll see what it looks like then. And I might start designing a little section to sew together and add on to make it big enough. I could be some time. I'm nearly at the end. I think I've got maybe 2 more seams to do, and then we can pin it on the board in one whole complete piece. And then I'll think about whether I'm going to start, yes, I've got 2 more to do, start designing the extension to it. So once you get into the rhythm of sewing a big piece like this, you can sort of concentrate down onto the seam you're doing. Like I said before, it's just this seam now, and the whole thing just folds beautifully. It's a bit geometric with that hexagon shape. But I've had enough of stitching now, so I think I need to do something a bit active after this. It's too much sitting down. Oh, I'm playing thread chicken as well. Do you think that little piece of thread's going to see me through the last seam? Probably. Let's see. Just fold that one in half there and fold it along that previous sew line there. And then these last 2 come perfectly into alignment. So that's taken me about 3 hours, I guess, because it's fiddly, but really well worthwhile doing properly. So there's our last one. And when you look at it close up there, you shouldn't be able to see the stitches on the front. It makes it really nice and neat. And you won't be able to see where the seam is. Somewhere around about there. Okay, there it is sewn together. It was worth doing. I'm pleased I've done that. And so next thing I need to do, I think it's wide enough, but I want it a little bit longer. So the next thing, I'm going to choose which end to design from and get my hexagons and make a little bit more. And the way, I'll show you the way that I do that. I have this piece of polystyrene. My design board is made out of polystyrene, an inch thick or a bit thicker, covered over with fabric. But I've got this smaller one here, and when I'm designing the next bit, so I'll take my hexagons here, and I've got loads of them, really loads, big box full. And what I'll do is I'll take these and stick them on here with a pin until I like how they look. And I'll maybe do, I don't know, 5 or 6 more runs. But then I transfer them singly to this board so that then it's portable and I can have it sitting next to me where I watch TV or whatever, and just pick up one run of hexagons. But that's going to happen next. But before I do anything like that, I'm going to go outside and have a little look round the outside, because it's actually not a bad day. It's not a brilliant day, but it's not a bad day, and the apple blossoms out on the trees. So I'm going to go outside for a little while and get some fresh air. This is a job that's long overdue in the garden. I've got some lettuce seedlings and I'm going to weed this raised bed thing here and plant the lettuces out. So I'm going to do that now. Be a nice change from being indoors and stitching.